Hey, it's Kira here from Toronto. Today, I'm welcoming Elinor Cohen, the social fairy who has built her entrepreneurial experience and agency based on the things she loves to do and those that she believes are important. Hi, Elinor. So happy to see you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Where are you located? You have such a nice background.
Okay, thank you. I'm located in the north of Italy. I'm actually hailing from Lombardia. So I'm situated in a little town right on the verge of the river Ticino, very close to Lake Maggiore. As I like to say, I live where most people want to take their vacations.
Totally. And you
Yeah.
have great pronunciations. So, how many languages do you speak?
Six, not counting computer languages.
That's a great answer. Can you tell me about your favorite world travel destination? Because you already live somewhere where people
Wow,
want to
yeah,
rest.
that's a tricky question because there's so many places I love. I think I'm right where I always wanted to be. So I'm not sure that the specific town is my favorite place. I mean, it is great, but ever since I was a little girl, so when I was about 11, I had this vision in my head. I got this notion stuck in my head that I should be living in Italy and specifically by Lake Maggiore. So I'm right where I should be, I guess. I hope.
Oh, that's amazing. So I think the topic that I announced is just the best fit. You do what you like, and
In the
that's
place that I love, yeah, I
yeah.
made my dream. I made my dream come true. It's been a journey. It's been a process, and it's been a journey, quite a long one. But yeah, yeah, I have made my dream come true.
So then let's talk through your story because you have very interesting positioning. So you are an engagement strategist.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you do and whether you have shaped this category?
I'm not sure I invented this phrase or this wording, so I'm not going to take any credit for it. But when I came up with it, I came up with it for a very good reason, at least for me at the time. And that was around 2015. So when you presented me, you said the social fairy. So when I started my journey, my entrepreneurial journey, so to speak, I started as the social fairy. That was the name that I chose for my business when I first started, when I went freelance. And I was doing everything alone. And the whole point was, despite the name social fairy, it wasn't about social media, which
Hmm.
is what is implied, but it was always about community management, because I started this business when I left a gaming startup that I worked for, as a community manager. That's where I not only fell in love with the world and the methodology of community management, but that's when I also realized that I have always been a community manager. I was
Hmm.
probably born to do that. One of the things that I tell people about myself, and it's no lie, is I communicate and connect with people very easily. So I'm one of those people who would go on a bus, get off, one stop later, and I have five new friends, and they are friends. So these are I meet people and I connect with them, and I stay in touch with them. Um, so at the point where I understood that this is what I love to do, and this is what I want to continue to do, that's when I started the Social Fairy, and that was in 2000 and end of 2010, 2011, and basically what I wanted to do, or my vision then, was to take the methodology of community development and community management and bring it into marketing. So use the principles of community and how you build communities and how you build engaged communities, as a mechanism of growth, basically as a model for marketing, for business growth, for everything. And fast forward 2015, the business grew. The
Mhm.
business grew. I had more clients than I could handle alone, and I needed help. And that's when my partner, my life partner and business partner now, has joined me. But he said, and I can't blame him, I don't want to be a fairy. So, yes.
And guys, for you, he's a big, bold guy.
He
Technology.
is. He is. And he said, I'm no fairy. So we had to think about the name. That's how it started. But that also brought along with it a repositioning, and not just a rebranding, but a repositioning of the business. The engagement strategy group, which is the name that we are using now, and hence my title as engagement strategist, is also not mine. And I have to give full credit to the person who came up with it for me, and that would be the late Alan Weinkrantz, whom I miss dearly. And yeah, he came up with the name. And we joked that, normally people pay a lot of money for naming. I still owe him a steak. I hope one day in a world, wherever he is, I may be able to repay.
Can you roll back to 2010 and explain a bit in more detail what it means to manage the community? What are the tools? What are the outcomes? And what are the stages? Like, however you want to do that.
Okay, so first of all, community management is not a new thing. And actually, it may be new for you, but it's not a new thing. It wasn't even a new thing in 2010. It was new in Israel at the time. If we take it to the digital realm and to internet and to marketing or anything to do with customers, okay, then there's two places where you would meet community management back then. And those two places are gaming. So the game master, any gamer knows that role. There would always be a game master. That would be someone who's playing with the players. So he's a gamer himself, or he's at least, even if he's employed by the gaming company, he is a character in the game. He does have a character, especially in MMORPGs or multiplayer games, role-playing games. So you would go and play the game, and people would chat through the game. And if there was a problem, like the game froze, or something happened with a bug, and I suddenly lost all my gold, or something happened and my character died when it shouldn't have died, those would be the moments when the game master would intervene and say, whoa, stop, wait, what happened? And try to help. So that would be, at least in the gaming world, that would be the first time we meet community management.
Well, I see my 10-year-old son doing that every day.
Yeah. And then the next step for that was customer support or customer service. Okay, so when we start around 2009, 2008 even, when we start having the social media platforms show up, when we start having Facebook and everybody goes on Facebook, and then, it became it started as sort of a trend that everybody has to be everywhere. So everybody has a Facebook page, and later on when there were groups, then Facebook groups, especially for businesses, then it was customary to think of the online customer support as community management, which it's not. But that's what the notion was. So that's way back in 2010. And that's also the reason why I started a freelance business, because when I left the gaming startup and I was first looking for another job, the only things that I could find at the time, in Israel at least, were social media management jobs, because everybody thought it's one and the same. And it's not. It is not. There is a difference between just managing a social platform or managing in the way of what I would say post and forget. So I prepared a post, I schedule them, I put them up, and I forget about them, versus community management, which requires active engagement. So that requires somebody actually looking at those posts, seeing if somebody commented, commenting to the comments, engaging with the people, taking it further, taking it offline if needed. So there's a lot more engagement, and we go back to the engagement. We keep going back to the engagement. And that's what I understood back then. So community management and community development is basically understanding the difference between a passive audience. Imagine a theater, okay? Imagine a cinema. I know nobody has seen the inside of a theater or a cinema for a few months now. And I hope this will change. But imagine yourself in a theater. You're watching, or in a cinema, you're watching the screen, you're watching the stage, you're not talking to the actors, you're not doing anything. So much in that sense, when a business communicates on social media, but doesn't have community management, doesn't invest in building a community and in engagement strategy, Okay,
Yeah.
then that business would then broadcast information, broadcast messaging, broadcast campaigns, whatever it is that they do. And the audience would consume that, view it, listen, watch the video, listen to the podcast, whatever it is. But then that's where it would stop. So
Yeah,
yes,
the audience would not engage. You're
exactly.
so
So
right.
some of those people may go on to click something, buy something, order a service, buy a product. Yes, I'm not saying it's not. I mean, that's pure advertising. It's always been the same. That's for eons. But the difference between a passive audience like that and a community is exactly that, the engagement. So with a community, you actually have a bilateral, a two-way communication or discourse or conversation. So you don't just broadcast your messaging out there, but you are telling a story, and that story is crafted to begin with based on values that you know are the common axis around which you build a community. And that is the whole purpose and the whole meaning of engagement strategy. So you build a strategy, which, yes, you can call it marketing strategy, you can call it business development strategy, you can call it whatever you want, but it is a strategy. But you build a strategy by first researching and understanding on a human level, on a personal level, on an emotional level. You want to understand the values and the issues and the interests that of your community. Here's where I stop using the word audience, because it's no longer just an audience.
True.
And then you craft your whole positioning, branding, messaging, campaigns, everything you will do, even your products, if you do it early enough. Even the service and the products that you provide, you craft them and you build them to answer those, or to fit those values. And this is the point where you basically connect to the people, to the human beings that make up your community, or communities. We should speak about multiple communities here, but this is where you connect with them on an emotional level from the gut. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. You explained it so well. I literally understand the difference now, and that was one of
Okay,
those
thank you.
light bulb moments. No, that's just amazing. And then for your clients, do you take on this purpose or goal to just build the community from scratch, or you are taking
Sometimes.
smaller communities?
Well,
Yeah.
that depends. It depends on the client, and it depends on the status of the company. So many of our clients are startup companies, and in that regard, they would either be very early stage. If they are, then we do start from scratch, and we start right from the beginning, which is the best and the optimal thing to do. If they are a little bit more mature, often they would arrive when they already have a product, and suddenly they realize, oh, damn, we need marketing. Pardon my French, yeah, but we need marketing and we don't know what to do. And then I build the marketing and the growth strategy based on the methodology of community development. So I try to build communities for them. And again, I use the multiple communities because it's not just customers. Remember what we said before, it was perceived only as customer service, but it's not just your customers. So here, and that to continue with your question, if it's a larger corporation, for example, then the community that we built may be that of the employees. So it could be an internal community. And employee engagement and employer branding are two very important things right now, because people started realizing that their employees could be not just their, they don't just need them to do the work. They could be ambassadors. They could be their face outside to the world. So
And
again,
that's so
building an internal community, it's overlooked. Yeah. Taking an internal community, putting it to work as an external growth mechanism, basically as a marketing channel. So we do that. And then other communities that we can think of are, especially again, going back to the startups, it could be investors, it could be strategic partners, it could be media partners. So key opinion leaders, influencers, bloggers, people who can write about you and promote you that way. And there is the difference between just doing outreach and maybe talking to them and even getting that coverage and leaving it at that, versus treating them as a community and basically connecting them to you and to what you do and to the values that you represent so much that they want to continue to support you. And that's what we do.
That's a great secret. And on the technical level,
Yeah.
Where we connected, that was based on social media community, but sounds like you might be using different platforms. Is there a
Yes.
platform for
There are multiple platforms.
Mhm.
There are many platforms. There are dedicated platforms for community management, and there are the social media platforms, of course. And again, depending on the type of community that you want to build and your needs, it can be as simple as a Facebook group, which I personally, by the way, like the least. So I
The
think it's the
list?
worst community. Yeah, it is, I think, the worst community channel out there. And I will, technically speaking, and I'll explain why if you want, but
I want.
uh,
Yeah, that was my question.
okay, so we'll get back to that. So that could be something like that. It could be a WhatsApp group, a Telegram group, or it could be a Slack group. It could be a GitHub. It could be an internal forum, like on your website. You can install a forum and have it right on your website. Or you can use, especially now with CRM, by the way, CRM platforms. So they embed community platforms and community engagement tools into the CRM platforms now, which are meant for use both internally, so back to the employee engagement and employee communities, and externally with your customers. When I do community building and community management, I always treat it as a multi-channel strategy. So there is the main hub or the main home for the community. And again, that can be a Facebook group, a WhatsApp group, a Telegram group, a LinkedIn group, anything that fits best the type of community and the people that we want to engage. And then for the same business or for the same company, if you have, like we said before, multiple communities, you may have multiple channels that are home or the hub, the center for each community. But then you have also tools that people don't even regard as community tools, but they are, which are your blog on your website, for example, because you need to create content for the community and you need to keep them engaged. And then how do you keep them engaged? You share that through social media, be it the channel that they are on, the main one, but also the secondary ones. And then there's the newsletter. So you will want to send email blasts. Those definitely are also community channels because people can reply on them, or it can connect them. They can start a conversation on another channel. So if you send an email and they start talking about it in the Facebook group, that is definitely community activity. So you start it in one place, you continue it in another, but it is the community talking. And all that needs to be managed, hence the title of a community manager. So the community manager really needs to be someone who's on top of all these channels. They don't have to be experts on them, but they have to be versed enough to know about them. If they are also the strategists, the engagement strategists, so they are the ones building the community, then they need to know how to do the research and how to apply whatever it is they find in the research to choose the right channel, to choose the right platform.
Yeah, and then that actually means that when you grow your not audience, but your peers in the community, your goal is actually to find them wherever they are in the world, those people who are relevant and will be engaged in this type of community, and bring them to those channels. If you have one major platform or channel, so you drop them into there. If you have multiple, so they would choose to start from one or the other. That's
but the
awesome.
only way we can find them and engage with them is through content. So that's something that we cannot escape from. And therefore, at least for me, my rule of thumb, whatever I do, is that the heart and soul of every business is their own website, plus a blog, which I maintain should be inside the website. So I don't believe if you have no choice, if there is a technical or logistical issue, and you really have no choice, then you can have your blog on an outside platform, example, Medium. It's not bad, but it's not good. So I prefer to have all the traffic, all the content going out from one place, coming back to one place. And the conversation channels would be the social media platforms or forums or groups or whatever. So in that regard, there will be one main one for each type of community where the conversation takes place, but the content that drives the community, what the values that they share will be emanating from and to the website.
Awesome. How do you measure success?
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of ways to do that. First of all, when we're talking about human behavior, it is not always quantifiable. So we have to remember that. and we have to align expectations. So if somebody comes to me and yes, we can measure, especially if when we're using the social media platforms as community channels, we can definitely measure follows, we can measure likes, we can measure comments. But I will use a phrase that actually a client used just a short while ago, and he was right. It's a body count. Okay. It sounds very macabre, but it's a body count. So
that was good.
Yeah, and that's why he's right. He's absolutely right. But that's what the platforms also give us. So they do try and claim, if you look at Facebook Insights, if you look at LinkedIn Analytics, they claim LinkedIn less than Facebook. Facebook actually, Facebook, Twitter used to do that. They removed it. But all those platforms claim to be able to also show us engagement, and sometimes even sentiment. And if not the platforms themselves, then there are multiple tools outside, external tools, third-party tools, like Trax, Nuvi, and others that can measure. Even HubSpot, I think, can do that. So they can measure your sentiment, if it's if somebody's talking to you or at you, negative, positive, neutral. But all that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we have to set very realistic goals. And remember, we're dealing with human beings, and human beings have good days and bad days, and they have moods and emotions. and I can tell you that for now in the past few months with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen tremendous shifts in every community that we've monitored. Because
unpredictable.
Well, actually, it is predictable when you remember we're dealing with people. It's very predictable to have downs, to have people who are quiet, people who used to engage and now they're quiet because they're depressed. But that's when a community manager who's attentive enough, who knows their community, will reach out and say, hey guys, what's up? Are you okay? Even if it doesn't have anything to do with what you're selling. But back to the KPIs. So there is an index that I created. I call it the high quality engagement index.
Nice.
Yeah. And the high quality engagement index for me is not so much in quantity, but in quality. It's a qualitative index that I look at when I try to evaluate how much people engage, how often they engage, on what level they engage. Do they just hit the like button? Or if they comment, is it just like 1 or 2 words? Or do they actually bother to leave
I noticed that as well.
a detailed comment? Because there is a difference.
There is.
And then, of course, there are the KPIs, the business KPIs that we always set, because it is, at the end of the day, as I said before, as I said when we started, I use the methodology of community development as a marketing tool, as a marketing channel. So at the end of the day, we do have the marketing KPIs, the standard ones. We want to see growth in the body count, but we also want to see sales.
Yeah, and that's all basically trackable because most of that is digital.
It is. So if you send a newsletter, you can see who clicked on which link. If you do campaigns on social media or on Google, you can use UTM tags. There's a lot of technical little tools that you can use to track where the click came from, or where the lead came from, or where the sale came from. But even then, for me, it's more important just to see the big picture than it is to go into the actual numbers. So if a company, if we take a startup company that has a product that is just going on the market, they haven't sold it yet. One approach could be go do a campaign. So let's assume it's a B2C product, because that's the easiest, just for the sake of the example. So one approach would be go do a campaign on Facebook, do a campaign on Google, put your product on Amazon if you can, and then measure sales.
Yep.
That's one approach. My approach would be more long-term thinking and strategic thinking. So build for the future, build that community, invest in that content. Yes, run the campaigns once you have enough content and once you have the community set up. Run the campaigns aimed specifically at the community that you've built and that you're continuing to build, because it's an ever-growing organism. And then at the end of the year, measure everything. So look at everything. Did you sell? Did you not sell? How much did you sell? Maybe you didn't sell, 100,000 pieces of your product, but maybe over this year, you've gained 2 strategic partnerships that the year after that will give you double that double those sales. And
Yeah.
that's something people forget. People don't see, they only look at the tip of their nose. How much did I sell this month?
Yeah, short term versus longer term and added benefit. And you actually started to answer my next question. How long does it take to strategize and implement this approach? So you said, let's say, measure in the end of the year, but do you have any rules of thumb or what works best?
Yes. Yes. Normally, when somebody approaches me for a community building or community development process, I estimate between 3 months to 6 months to do the actual building, but that's already starting to see results because usually you would take the first month or so for research, proper in-depth research, which would include survey. So you would definitely select your core community to begin with, and you would start with people so it's very easy to do, for example, with employees if it's an internal community, but even with potential customers, if you already have and especially with startups, a lot of times they run on stealth mode, and then they when they arrive to the point where they start to market, they already have a mailing list of, I don't know, 2,000 emails or something like that. So you have what to start with. And if not, then you can start with family and friends, or you can go on a Facebook group of someone else, dedicated to a topic or a value that you want to tap into, and basically say, who's willing to help answer a short survey. And that's when you start collecting some insights into what moves those people. And then you craft your content plan and you start creating that content, and you set up the community channels, and you can move as fast as you want or as slow as you want. So in my experience, around 3 months, 2 to 3 months is the minimum for actually getting it set up, running, and working, and have enough content to pour into it to start getting that snowball rolling and growing. But then you have to start looking. So yes, we do look, obviously we look at monthly levels, but we don't report. So we don't, unlike social media agencies, for example, we don't issue a report every month, or even not sometimes not even quarterly, because it's not about the body count. So if somebody wants that, then a social media agency can do that very well, and they can set up your Facebook page and they can do all the posts, and that's it. But they're not going to build a community for you. And if that results in sales, perfect for you, great. But it will stop at one point, because there is that ceiling that you reach.
My brain is spinning hard because we work together, but I didn't realize that there is such a great potential and such a difference in what you do.
Yes.
From social media marketing. That's just amazing conversation.
There is a difference. So I usually look, and I also like to update my research a little bit. So keywords and people and values and trends around every 6 months. So kind of looking at it, refreshing the strategy. The worst enemy of any business or anything in life actually is not being flexible enough. So if you're rigid,
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So even if we invest in proper research and we come up with, a set of documents at the end of the, you really do get, at least that's what we do. You get from us a set of documents with your a marketing master file with everything you need, keywords and content and key opinion leaders. We already identify them in the research. So those influencers, the bloggers, the media people that we want to attract, all of that. And then you get a content plan template, and you get a huge document with who we want to talk to. So your audiences and how we want to turn them into communities and everything, including going down to the tactical level of the social media management of the frequency. Okay, so how many blogs you were going to put on your website, and how many times you're going to post on whatever channels that are suitable for you. So maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's both. I don't know.
Love it.
Yeah. So we do that. But then if you stay with that and you don't move from that set of documents,
that's not helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not helpful because things change.
Yeah. And can you tell me whether you have those companies, maybe smaller companies, who just do community building, community management, and don't do any other type of marketing? Because it sounds like it might be even enough.
Yes, because it does cover everything in it. So it's not exactly that they don't do any other marketing. It's a mistake to think about that, and it's not right to also do that. But if you think about what I just told you, we do cover everything. So we cover the content and the campaigns and the social media in that, as well as the PR. In that set of documents that I talked about, there's also reference. We also refer to events. So conferences, who remembers what those are?
Yeah.
But we do refer to that. So pre-event, during event, post-event strategies and how to do, what to do and how to do it. But all with, keeping in mind that we're not just broadcasting. So we're not just going to build a booth, assuming again, ever there will be a conference, a normal conference. So we're not just going to be building a booth and maybe holding a raffle, but we are going to actively engage. So how
and
do
bring
we
them in? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So how do we start engaging before the event? How do we engage with the people who pass by our booth, or how do we actually go to other booths even and engage? How do we communicate what we do through our social media, website, community channels? And then after the event, how do we maintain contact?
Wow. Is it a costly service? I'm not asking about specific numbers, but maybe
well,
in relation to something else.
answering this question is very, the answer to that is very subjective, because what's costly for someone is cheap for another. So it's not a cheap service. Let's put it this way. It's not a cheap service, because it does require, especially if I have to do it, then I have to take into account quite a significant amount of hours that I'm dedicating to that one specific client to do that. But then the management, the ongoing, so the strategy part, for example, might be a little bit more costly if you only do that. But then if you do it on a long-term basis, so if clients who work with us on retainer and basically get, so we dedicate the first month or two to the strategy and the building of the channels, and then we start managing them, we start running them, then it is a bit cheaper, because then what we do is basically we work with a ongoing or renewing hour bank, so to speak. But then that also allows me to dedicate not just my brain power to this, but also the brain power of other people that I work with.
So tell me why you dislike Facebook groups.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the reason I dislike Facebook groups is because, and that's a really purely technical, logistical thing, is that they are not, when you think about community and about engagement and about communication, you want a place that is safe. Now, no place is completely and 100% proof. People are people. We talked about that. And if there is a troll in your community, or someone who's really angry and had a bad day, somebody might take a screenshot and take it out of the community. That can happen with every channel. But for some reason, it's happening more on Facebook groups. It's easier. Now, Facebook groups have, in addition to that, they've only now recently introduced threading. So you know that when you reply on a Facebook group, up until about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, every reply was in the same level. So you had the post, and then you had reply. And sometimes it wasn't very clear who's replying to who. So how is it's very hard to follow a conversation this way. Then so now they introduced threading. So you do have those threads, so you can see who replied to who, which is easier, and that's great. That's very nice of them. But it is still not very clear. Then there is the issue of the multiple, like every other day there's bugs. Something doesn't work. You want to tag someone and tagging doesn't work.
True, I confess.
Yes. And then on top of that, you also have the multiple, they created such a big monster with this that it's very hard to control. So they've started playing around with all the security and the privacy measures, and that's very confusing. So most group managers aren't even aware of all the options they do or do not have. These options change every, you can wake up one morning and something that you were using is gone. Topics, for example, on groups. One day it was there, one day it was not, then it came back. Searching groups didn't go, at least last time I checked, didn't go farther than 30 days back.
True.
So yeah, it is very hard to run a community like this, because sometimes you need to find something that was said a year ago. You want to know who replied to who. You want to tag. You want to use topics to divide or sub communities you want to create. You can't. Facebook group doesn't have subgroups, for example. So LinkedIn groups also doesn't have subgroups. But if you use Slack, just as an example, you can create channels and sub-channels, and you can then create some of them that are public and some of them that are private. And then you can actually have a community with multiple internal little communities that are either hidden or not hidden from one another. So you can do a lot of things. You can actually have all in one place. You can have like a little group or a little community for the community managers.
Yep.
Now, if you think long term, let's be very optimistic. Let's say we built a community and it grew and we've done it so well. There will come a time when leaders will start emerging from within the community.
Yeah.
And then you will want to use that. You will want to leverage that. So you will want to give them some permissions. You will want to make them moderators. You would want to give them their own communities to manage. And it can be, again, depending on the business, depending on the product or the service. It can be location-based, or it can be age-based, or it can be anything. It can be, you know, for women or men. And you can't do that on Facebook, because the only thing you can do is open a new group. So you'll have multiple groups that are not connected in any way other than maybe their name. And it's very confusing and it's very overwhelming. And especially when you think about the members. So it's basically a community, pseudo community channel that's sitting inside a huge platform where everybody also has their own profile and friends. And where you're also bombarded with advertising, both on the main feed and on the group feed. So you really can't find your hands and feet there. So it's really not an optimal community channel, to say the least.
Yeah, no, I so much agree with you, and I face that multiple times a day. So I guess there is still open marketplace for new players like Mighty Networks or others. They're just less known, but let's see what will happen in 5-10 years.
There is, and I think this market is only going to grow.
Yeah.
I don't think this market is going to ever reach a red ocean situation.
Oh, wow.
Because again, if we refer to a community, and this is something very important, at least to me on a personal level, we keep talking about community, but it's not just you know, an archaic or just a cliche or an idea out there. I think a community is a living, breathing organism.
It is.
Because it is made of people.
It is.
Okay, so it is a living, breathing organism, and as such, made of people who, like we said, have good days, bad days, emotions, values, differences of opinions, even within the same community. So much in the same way, communities are so different, and they're so ever changing and growing and
dynamic. Yeah.
They can be one thing one day and another thing another day. The same community I'm talking about. So yes, there will always be room for more community channels or more community tools or things that will help do this better. And one of the things that I think this current pandemic has shown us, it kind of put a mirror in front of us, is that social distancing, okay, which forces us to move online, basically. It has literally shown us that we don't have enough tools. It is not enough, or it is not just a matter of, you know, doing everything on Zoom or going on a Facebook group. No, it's not. Human connection is so intricate, it's so elaborate that it really can't be put into the little box of a Zoom call or a chat on Facebook. So we definitely have the need for more tools, for more platforms, and I think this will not change.
Yeah, and we need more connectivity and the ability to find actually people like us who listen and understand and accept each other. That's an amazing conversation. Last question I want to ask you, one main thought that you would love our listeners to take from this conversation, what would it be?
Always remember the human being, always remember the people. So whatever it is that you do, and it's very easy to forget. And again, going back to what we're experiencing right now, especially now when everybody's doing everything digitally and with Zoom and everything, very easy to forget. But at the other side, at the other end of that keyboard or that screen is a human being. Whether that human being is your direct client or not, whether that human being is your employee, whether that human being is the purchasing manager of a big corporation, if you sell B2B, it is still a human being. And that human being still has good days, bad days, thoughts and opinions. So take that into account. Never forget that. We are people, we are human, and it's not about KPIs, it's about human connections.
Thank you, Elinor.
You're welcome.